What's going on, everybody? VitalSyntax here, and I'm going to be giving you guys my first impression reviews of Dishonored, which came out earlier in the week. I just was able to pick it up today, and I've been playing it for the past couple hours. So keep in mind, this is not a comprehensive review. I haven't completed the game, and there's actually a couple different ways you can complete the game, and they have, or at least from what I've heard, they have different endings. So I'll have to probably do a full comprehensive review, especially over how I liked the game as kind of a whole package once I finish it. But there are a lot of things I wanted to talk about in this video, and this should give you a pretty good idea of what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and also maybe whether or not you should purchase it. And I'm also going to give it some kind of a rating system to help you guys understand what I liked about it. So I kind of divided this whole thing up into a couple different categories. So let's first start with the graphics of the game. And I just have to say, it's one of the best looking games I've seen from an artistic standpoint. Sure, it's not like the most graphically intensive game like Battlefield or Crysis 3 or something like that, but it reminds me kind of like, Borderlands or Wind Waker, one of the Zelda games, or something like Team Fortress 2, where it kind of has that cartoony shell shading effect, but it's almost very unique and it's very different from shell shading at the same time. But it has that kind of same soft texture look to it, which is just absolutely amazing. Really love the art style with it. And also has really good PC performance. Once again, I'm playing on the PC. I didn't try this out on the consoles, but I was getting very good frame rate on the max settings with my computer, so definitely well optimized in that sense. And there's also a good decent amount of options on the PC side of things. It's always good to have things like anti-aliasing, things like VSync, being able to turn the details and the graphics and the textures all up and stuff like that. And along with the soft textures, it also has like an oil painting effect to it, which I think mostly reminds me of Borderlands, but it's a lot different than Borderlands, right? Borderlands is very gruesome, very gritty in the textures and the lighting and stuff like this. This is very artistic, very beautiful, and very eerie at the same time. So it's very unique in that sense, and overall I'm going to give the graphics a 9 out of 10. The only reason I didn't give it a 10 out of 10 is there were some lower end textures, and I feel like they could have pushed the PC side of things a little bit farther. But in reality, I mean, they're amazing graphics. Easily one of the best graphics I've seen in a really long time. All right, so the next part I want to talk about is the gameplay of the game. So the biggest part that I liked about the gameplay is that there is a ton of options on how you can play the game, a bunch of variety, which is something very nice, very refreshing that a lot of games don't have. And it reminds me mostly of BioShock as far as the gameplay goes, because there's lots of different weapons. They're kind of laid out the same way that BioShock does. You also have a lot of powers, just like BioShock. You're not like sending fire bolts or lightning bolts out of your hand like you do in BioShock, but instead you have powers like being able to teleport or being able to see enemies' field of view, so you can stay out of it and basically become a ninja, or being able to get control of another animal, another person. Things like that. So it's really like supernatural powers instead of these lightning and fire coming out of your hands. But it has kind of the same thing. You can hold one weapon. It's typically a sword or a knife in your right hand, and that's designated to your left click. I'm guessing it's probably our right trigger on the consoles. And then you can have a power located in your left hand, or if you prefer, you can have that also as like a gun. So you could have a sword and a pistol, or a sword and a crossbow. But getting back to the variety of the gameplay, the first thing is there's a ton of stealth elements. You can play this game without killing. I believe you can play the whole game without killing anybody other than like the designated targets that you're assigned to kill, because you're assassin in this game. So I'm pretty sure there are a couple people you have to kill, but I'm not positive. Once again, I'll have to kind of mess around with that. But I'm actually playing in a more aggressive approach. I've killed a ton of people so far. I'm probably going to go back and do a full stealth playthrough because I really enjoy that type of gameplay. But if you are somebody that likes that, it's definitely here for you, and it's definitely really enjoyable, at least the amount that I've done. And it almost kind of reminds me of, at least gives you kind of the feeling of like a Splinter Cell type of game where you're sneaking around and stuff like that. There's a ton of different alternate routes, a ton of different ways to do objectives. You might have to get past this certain area, and you could go around, you could go straight through, you could blow up a wall, you could control a rat and go through a little crevice in the wall or something like that. There's just so many different ways you can do it, and they all have different outcomes and different basically events they trigger. You can also knock out enemies instead of killing them. You just come up behind them, basically sneak up behind them and you choke them, and then you can hide their bodies. If people find the hidden bodies, if you don't hide them properly, or you just leave them out in the open, that can trigger alarms and things like that. So overall, there's a lot of stealth components. I think there's definitely an emphasis on playing this game in stealth, but you don't have to. You can do it totally run and gun. You can kind of do a mixture. That's what I'm doing. But definitely all the options and the varieties there, which is just phenomenal. The combat, let's start with the combat. So there's a lot of different weapons. You have like swords, you have guns, you have crossbows, and the crossbow has different types of ammo. You have like normal crossbow bolts, you have tranquilizer bolts, you have explosive bolts, there's mines and traps, and you can also do like a counter/block thing with the sword, which is really cool and kind of adds a, I don't know, intense skill-based type of combat system. Although there's one thing I would like to see is some type of dodge mechanic. As far as maybe there's a skill I can get later on. There is the counter/blocking, but I would have liked to see maybe like a dodge thing where you can roll out of the way or something like that. That's something that I really liked in, I guess, a game like The Witcher 2 or something like that. And once again, there's just a very, very strong emphasis and influence, I guess, from BioShock in general, which, as everybody knows, was, you know, an amazing game. And there's definitely a lot of similarities, but in good ways. All right, so let's move on to the next section, which, oh, and by the way, I'd give the gameplay a 10 out of 10. Moving on to the voice acting. So there is a ton of voice acting in this game, and a lot of it is, you know, just characters abstract, or, you know, like enemies that are just walking around, and they almost have like their own kind of sub storylines that are available if you listen to them. But beyond that, there's also a ton of storyline driven voice acting that's very, very emotionally driven. There's lots of variety as far as the voice actors go. That's one of the problems I have with Skyrim, is there's just so many, or there were so few actors for how many people there actually were in the world, that you start to hear repetition between some of the actors. And that was really kind of an issue for me. But in this game, I haven't heard anybody that kind of was repetitive. So at least so far, there's a lot of variety as far as the voice actors go. The only problem I had with the voice acting was the lip syncing wasn't perfect. It was pretty good, but it wasn't, you know, amazing or anything like that. So overall, I'll give the voice acting a 9 out of 10. All right, so let's talk about the storyline next. First thing is that it's extremely compelling. From the very beginning of the game, you are just kind of thrown into this storyline. I'll kind of give you the premise without giving you too many spoilers. Basically, you are framed for the murder of an emperor. It's a female emperor, and you're trying to, you know, basically prove that you're innocent and uncover the people that were truly responsible for the murder. So it's very emotionally driven. You know, at the same time, there's a daughter involved, and you're kind of emotionally attached to this daughter towards the beginning of the game, and that's kind of what drives the story a little bit. I've heard that there's different endings. I haven't tried it myself, but I've heard that if you don't kill anybody versus if you do kill a lot of people, there's actually different endings. Like killing, you know, if you kill a bunch of people, it's a little bit darker of an ending. But I'll have to wait and see about that. And also, there's very interesting characters. There's very, very interesting places and locations that you go to. So overall, the storyline, I gave it a 9 out of 10. All right, let's move on to the overall presentation, which this kind of has to do with like how many, you know, the detail in the world, locations and settings, and how creative or original the concepts and stuff are. So the detail of the world is phenomenal. There's so much detail in this world. Every building you go to has, you know, tons of design and unique features into it. There's nothing that was really copied and pasted, and it's all very, very elegant and very, very well done and created. The location and setting is perfect. I have to give it, this is one of the best locations and settings that I've ever seen in any video game. It's a mix between, I guess, like 18th or 17th century Europe and like kind of a steampunk feel, but instead of being powered off of steam, this whole community in this world is powered off of whale oil, which I know sounds really weird, but it plays really cool into like the gameplay elements and the detail that they have into this world. So everything is kind of powered by this whale oil, which is quite interesting, and it's also, you know, very unique, and it kind of has this dark twist, you know, kind of feel to the world that, you know, that it gives it. And also, it's just extremely original as far as the locations and settings and stuff like that. The combat, it takes a lot from BioShock, but at the same time, it also adds a lot of new concepts and stuff. So I would say that's also quite original. And overall, I'd give the overall presentation a 10 out of 10. So overall, those are all kind of the categories I wanted to go over for this review. I'd give the game a 9 out of 10, possibly even higher, but I'm just kind of keeping it to whole numbers. If I were to do in digits, it'd probably be above a 9. But I definitely think this is one of the best games that we've seen in a while. Definitely one of the best games this year. It isn't the longest game, and it's also not the biggest game. I've heard that it takes about somewhere between 15 and 20 hours to complete. But I haven't completed it yet, so it might be a little bit longer, it might be a little bit shorter. And it's also not the biggest game as far as it being an open world. It is kind of more linear in that sense, but it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just not the the open world biggest game like you might expect from something like Skyrim. But anyway, if you guys enjoyed the review and found it helpful, feel free to give me a like or a favorite. Feel free to leave down the comments down below if you guys have any questions about maybe something I'd missed in this review, or if you guys want to give your thoughts about Dishonored, just feel free to leave them in the comments. And remember to subscribe to be auto-notified when I upload the next video, and I'll see you guys later.